it's Mo and welcome to another video. Today I'll be going over my entire process of how I make finished pieces like these and hopefully giving some other helpful tips along the way. Also, I may be using more intermediate terms because explaining every single concept mentioned might take quite a while and also interrupt the flow of the video. So if there's anything you'd like me to expand on, I'd be happy to meet you down in the comments or make a separate video explaining better. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started. The first thing I do when I want to draw is to get excited about it. You can find inspiration in absolutely anything, whether media like podcasts, movies, or books, or outside in nature. I like to listen to my favorite tracks and just picture what it is I want to convey to the viewer. Even if you don't plan out everything beforehand, having a somewhat clear idea of what you want will make sure you don't get lost or confused along the way. And even if you do, you can find your way back. If you're not sure what you want to draw, but just have the general want to pick up your pencil, stylus, or whatever, draw this in your style or DIY challenges are a great way to go. Though by the time this video comes out, the challenge will likely be over. I had decided to participate in Renee Art's DIYS challenge. I saw her post on Instagram, immediately fell in love with her character design, and was very excited to find out that this particular character was part of a webtoon called What Happens to the Villainess. It's reminiscent of the manhwa type girl lands in role of villainess, but it's not one way. The villainess also lands in the real world, and we get to follow both their stories. It has just a few chapters, but it's already quite intriguing. If you're into that type of comic, I totally recommend it. After getting excited and knowing what I'd like to draw, it's time to start the conception phase. I usually like to do this on paper. There's just something about making those initial sketches traditionally. I think it helps me feel more grounded about the idea. I already made the concept sketches before recording this, so here's some footage of me making sketches for a different project. I like to sketch loose and fast and try not to erase previous ones as well so I can compare them all later. I don't really get too attached to a single sketch, and I often pause, trying to make sure the sketch lines up with what I'd like to say. Making notes of possible alternatives, edits, and color choices beside them helps as well. I won't go into much detail about the thought process behind each of the sketches, as it's different for every person and also evolves with time. Just make sure to have fun while doing them. Something that I've applied ever since I've heard it though is this idea I heard from the artist Naoki Saito, that your final concept sketch should make you excited, even in its most basic form, with no colors or effects yet. Here are the actual sketches I made for this project, and as you can see, they don't really have to be too detailed, they just have to capture the general idea, and so long as you know what's going on, it's fine. I decided to go with this one since it matched the mysterious vibe I wanted, portrayed the idea of a secret identity, and also included the intriguing elements of books, though you might not be able to see it yet. Now that we have our concept sketch, it's time to expand on it and make our base sketch. I'll be using Mediblank Paint Pro on my laptop, but you can use whatever you're comfortable with. I start by making a new canvas with a size of 2000 by 2500 pixels and jump right into it. I focus on arranging my objects on the page and look at the bigger picture, trying not to zoom in too much. There's not much else to say here, apart from relax and have fun sketching. While making the bookshelves, I noticed that I drew the width of the shelf smaller at the top, and that gave me the idea to try a slightly low-angle perspective, but let's finish this draft first. Now that I'm done with the first sketch, I can try that perspective idea I had. I find that in doing perspective drawings, it helps if I already have a neutrally angled base to start from, and this initial sketch is perfect for that. I mostly altered the basic shapes of the drawing so it looks like we're slightly looking up at the scene instead of straight on. If you'd like to see a more in-depth perspective review, do comment down below. I'll try my best to address it even though I'm not really a professional. And done! Here's the two of them side by side. I'm much happier with the second one, but I'm glad I had the first to build up from. I decided to go back in and change some things, like making the canvas slightly taller and resizing some of the elements to complement the perspective and give the illusion of scale. Now that I'm happy with how the sketch draft looks, I go ahead and begin the value draft. I have a value scale of 0 to 10 saved in my color palette, and I mainly limit myself to these 11 tones when working with value. On a multiply layer, I block out the main shadow first, adding some bounce light so it doesn't look too monotonous. I then start working on the smaller areas of shadow, always keeping in mind my planned light direction. In this case, it's coming from the bottom right. Since I wanted it to feel mysterious, I kept the piece on the darker side, using tones 5 to 9. Once I'm done and liking how it looks, I go ahead and create a new layer to block in my base values. You can use several methods for this, painting it in by hand, using the selection tool, or different fill tools based on your convenience. Lastly, I make a selection of my multiply layer and invert that selection. This highlights everything outside of my shadows. I then create a new layer on add mode for the light and fill it in with my desired value. I adjusted the opacity of the add layer, refined some details, and this is our final value pass. Here's how it looks without the line art. Still pretty readable. Now that we have a strong value base, it's time for our color draft. I first started with the colors of the light source and the shadow. I wanted to have a warm light source like candlelight and a somewhat cool shadow, but they ended up clashing. Eventually, I made the shadow warmer by shifting the hue towards red. Now that I sort of like how it looks, I go ahead and block in the base colors. I check how it looks again, and I don't like it. I try not to panic and use the hue slider to test out different alternatives. While I initially wanted the piece to have a generally cool undertone, I ended up with a much warmer final piece, but it was still missing something, so I tried to play a bit with the tone curve to adjust the hues, and it turned out like this. Yeah, no. More tweaking happened, and this is what it looked like in the end. Now, though there was a subtle feeling of unsatisfaction with the colors, I was more pressed about the fact that there was absolutely nothing in the foreground, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to add that would tell the story I wanted. Wait, what was the story again? She's in a library, but doing what exactly? Why is she shushing us? Why does she even know we're there? And does this piece even match with the character's traits from the webtoon? There was also the fact that there were no framing elements, like absolutely none. Basically, if she wasn't smack in the middle of the canvas and didn't have a higher value contrast in the background, what would lead your eyes to her as the focal point? So far, I went from absolutely loving the concept to feeling quite unsure about it. I was hoping not to push this button this time around, but I can't keep stalling.